The DMC reboot is one of the games in the series that gets the most flack, other than DMC 2. From changing Dante's design, from gameplay changes to how crude the game is in comparison, this game had a rough time to get its foot in it though. And after playing it myself, I can say I somewhat enjoy it, but there's still a whole lot I don't like about the reboot. Even without comparing it to the original series, I just feel there are some aspects that just don't hold up. But I say we can get into the video just because I do want to explain why I don't really like this. But also note I will be talking about the Steam port, so it's not the definitive edition. There were quite a lot of gameplay changes in that version, and that's only available on the PS4 and Xbox One. So again, any problems I have will be in reference to the original version that being released on PS3, 360, and Steam. But as always, we start off with what I liked, and the first thing I liked had to be the gameplay. It's really smooth in the movement, and doing different combos just feel really nice. It also feels just as fun as like the modern DMC games, which I also found to be really enjoyable in the gameplay part. It also gives you quite a bit of different weapons to mess around with, and frankly those really add to the smoothness of the gameplay just because you can swap around between them easily and just transition to a different weapon and just continue doing combos with that weapon. This next point goes off what I just said, and frankly I still really do like the weapon selection in this game. Each weapon has different combos to them and have slightly different aspects to them, while something like the knuckles, you can charge up your attacks, and the axe is just single big attacks, while something like the scythe and shurikens have more crowd control, but even those two act somewhat differently. Well, say for example, I feel like the shurikens have a slightly better crowd control, while I feel like the scythe is slightly more offensive. Another part I did like had to be the environments and the graphics of the game. To me, they all look really nice, and at least when I'm going through the levels, I just stop and look at some of the parts just because, again, they do look really nice. And that's sadly all I really liked about the game, and I'll get into why I dislike it because, frankly, there was a lot in this game I just do not like. One of the things definitely has to be the story, and frankly, I just don't really like all that much. It's more or less just Mundus already have taken over the world and you have to go take him down. In theory, it's not that bad, but I feel like execution just drags down a lot for me because the characters are only that great and it's just evil for the sake of being evil, I feel. And I know DMC 1 was like that, but I feel like you had more of a motivation to take down Mundus in that game just because he killed your mom and he also took your brother away from you. So I feel like in this case, Mundus is just an evil big bad guy with no really backstory related to him. And even then, again, the characters I just didn't really get into, and that's kind of like the next point. Well, for example, someone like Cat doesn't really do much and really only gets kidnapped in the second half of the game. Vulture feels like he's more important, but like he just doesn't really do much. And I know in something like DMC 1, he just fights you a lot without really, doing all that much, but at least you felt involved with him because you sooner or later found out that you're related. And then even DMC 3, he's basically one of the other villains in the game, which I did like a lot better. And then even then the final fight, like with Virgil, I just did not like just because it felt really forced. Then there's also some small mechanics in this game that I just did not like or found really weird to find out that it wasn't in the original version. Stuff like the dedicated lock-on and how angel and devil weapons work. The lock-on to me is the most concerning since every other game had one, and it just makes fighting crowds of demons a lot more annoying. Because with the auto lock-on, you often swap in between demons and just makes battles last a lot longer. And as I mentioned before, the angel and devil weapons really work in an odd way. In this case, angel weapons can only hit demons that are blue, and devil weapons can only hit demons that are red, which doesn't sound bad, but if you use any other weapon against it, they just bounce off and it kind of just ruins the flow of combat. And I know these changes were fixed in the definitive edition, but if you play any other version, it just works like that, and I find it really annoying, and I just do not like that whatsoever. And you can work around this, it's just that I feel it shouldn't have been like this in the first place, and it just kind of ruins the pace of some fights. Then there are the boss fights, and frankly I find most of them to be really simple to go up against. Of course, other DMC games had really simple bosses, but I feel most of them were super challenging to the point where you had to actually pay more attention. While in this one, you don't really have to pay as much attention because all you have to do is dodge a really big attack, do some damage and just, like do it until they die. And so speaking of bosses, I find this game a little bit too much on the easy side, at least with how you get an S rank. In this game, it's based on damage instead of doing constant combos, and to me, if you really want to challenge yourself, just this game isn't really made for that, just because, all you have to do is not get hit, and then use the easiest weapon for consistent damage, which I guess for newcomers can be kind of okay, but I felt like something like DMC 4, 5, and 3 kind of just really rewarded you on that, and for me, I just don't like it as much, but I guess, again, as I said, it might be fine with newcomers. Just as someone like me who actually likes doing different combos in the middle of battle, I just don't really like it as much. And the biggest thing that really annoyed me was how the game took itself way too seriously, and how a lot of the dialogue just is really, really bad. For example, Dante swears way too much, a lot of it feels way too forced, and it comes off as if an edgy 14-year-old wrote the entire game. Obviously, you can probably spend just maybe 20 minutes looking at the cutscenes and you could tell what I mean. And even this shows in the game's design for like the characters and stuff like that, because it's more of a gritty game, which I don't mind as much, since something like DMC 3 is a lot darker and DMC 1 is also a lot darker. But those games' dialogue never felt like forced. It just came off of either really bad in the case of DMC 1 because of the time it was made, but even then, later games like 3, 4, and 5 never really felt forced and edgy. And even then, the characters, how they act, it's just not as good as other games, because as I said, they feel forced, and same thing with the bosses, and even Mundus himself, and it's just not as enjoyable. It just takes me out of the game quite a lot. Trust me when I say that I really did want to like the reboot, but I feel a lot of the problems lie with how Ninja Theory tries to separate these games, so just this game. I know when rebooting a series, you want to separate from the older titles, but I feel the DMC reboot tries way too hard to be taken seriously, while the other games, to me, never really cross those lines. The gameplay here is still really solid for the most part. It's just that all the other parts, like the story, characters, and a bunch of the little things in the gameplay, just do not cut it for me. If you want a somewhat decent action game, the game's really good for that. But if you want a story-based game or just a DMC game, those don't really live up to the series' name, in my opinion. But as always, we go over the likes and dislikes of the video. Likes, smooth and fun gameplay, weapon selection, good graphics and nice looking locations. Dislikes, characters, story, odd gameplay mechanics, really easy combat and easy bosses, and the game takes itself way too seriously and it's far too crude in the dialogue. Thank you guys for watching, and see you guys later.